positions currently in the northern region of the country remain in the northern region. B, that all PDP national office positions currently in the southern region of the country remain in the southern region. C, that the position of the national chairman haven't been retained in the northern region of the country. The presidential candidate of the party for the 2027 general election is thereby zoned to the southern region. Acting national chairman, Ambassador Ilya Umar Damagu, in stabilizing the party, NEC hereby ratifies and confirms the appointment of Ambassador Ilya Umar Damagu as the substantive national chairman of the party with effect from today, 25th August 2025, until the National Convention on the 15th and 16th of November 2025 at Ibadan, Oyo State Capital.
There you have the National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Debo Ologunagba, announcing the outcome of the 102nd NEC meeting of Opposition People's Democratic Party. That decision, those decisions, sending ripples across the country's political space. But we want to get an understanding beyond just a political party point of view. That's why we're being joined by Professor of Political Science and International Relations at Nasarawa State University, Kefi, Professor Jideofor Adibe, joins us from our Abuja studio. You're welcome to the program, Professor Adibe.
Thank you very much, Kayode. Good morning.
Good morning. I know we've had conversations around the political space, what decisions the parties will take ahead of 2027. Well, the PDP has made its decision now. It is clear which way the PDP plans to go for 2027. But the big question is this a political masterstroke? Or this decision will give the PDP a political stroke, particularly cotton supply from northern Nigeria? What do you make of this decision?
Well, thank you very much. First of all is that politicians see this as a game. So it's important that we look beyond appearance. These politicians are, you can call them Machiavellian octopuses. They think ahead. It's possible that there are powers behind this kind of game, maybe to lure some people into the PDP. And let's say, for example, if some people are lured into the PDP, and where you have Jason Wike, you still have Makinde, and then eventually, some people who are lured into that place may be denied, even that being the candidate. And if it goes to Makinde, some people will believe he's merely a placeholder for President Tinubu. So I am not really looking at it in terms of, now the PDP has to be reinvigorated because he's zoning this thing to the south. And by the way, when you say the south, it's also a gimmick. Because what we have had since 1999 has been a relay race between the northwest and the southwest, apart from the Jonathan's interregnum. So I'm still watching how it is unfolding, and what we need to do is to look beyond the headlines. For example, if Damaguni is there, who is he beholden to politically? And what is the game plan? You have to think of possible scenarios beyond what is happening that they have just said we are zoning to the south. Yes, you may zone to the south, but the whole essence may be that the powers that be, the President Tinubu, whatever you may think of, remains a master in this game, that is part of his own calculations. So we have to, many people are not enthused. We are still watching to see how things are unfolding and what the ultimate game plan may be.
I can hear the, what I call it, suspicion in your tone.
Yeah.
You are still very suspicious of all of these decisions. You don't see it as every other person perhaps sees it. Oh, that it's been zoned to the south, let's move on. And you mentioned one key figure. That's the national chairman of the PDP. And a lot of people have raised concerns about his relationship with the FCT minister. I imagine that is where you're going. Do you still suspect that the FCT minister is still big in the play when it comes to this current PDP decision that we just saw being made yesterday?
Well, there are three groupings, if you like. We can call them factions now. We can three major groupings within the PDP. You know, you have the Bala Mohammed group. Then you have the Yeson Wike, and Makinde wants us to believe that it's a different grouping. Some of us are suspecting that it may still be part of a game plan. You know, I may be wrong, but you learn in political analysis when you do what we call political behavior, not to take appearance. There's a lot of decoy. People don't want to be predicted, because when you predict them, very politicians, if they become easily predictable, it becomes easier to hem them. So, which PDP are we talking about? Maybe in the short term, it may be able to attract a few people, some people, especially those who are being betted with the presidential ticket, the likes of Peter Obi and others, say, come to the PDP. If I were Peter Obi, I would not swallow that bet. If I were Peter Obi, I would work on the assumption that the ultimate aim is to make sure that I don't have a platform to run. And I think he's already, I mean, he's also not a stupid man. And his moves, he doesn't want you, nobody shows their hands fully in politics. So and we have heard about relationships between Magun. Sometimes they contrive even animosity, they contrive disagreement and make it a public thing. And then in the end, it becomes part of their own political chess moves. So we're just waiting. I don't think I'm overly excited about this. And talking about this zoning, in principle, let me use the opportunity to say that when you talk about zoning and power rotation, they are similar but not exactly the same thing. It is part of the contrivances for building a nation. And anti-zoning elements will come and tell you, oh, let's go for merit. Once anybody comes around and tells you it is about merit, know that that person is a hypocrite. Because in every aspect, the essence of when we say federal character, it's not to, to address previous historical grievances like affirmative action. It is part of the process of deliberate use of state instruments to create a nation. And that is why we say the goal of federal character and things like zoning and power rotation is to create a rainbow nation, to make sure that every segment of the society is given a chance, is given that a sense of belonging. All of us, including me and you, we are all ethnic watchers. It is part of the ways we adjudge the sincerity of any government in power. So even if you move out of this party on ordinary life, if you go to a WAEC exam, or NECO exam, or JAMB exam, people use different scores to gain admission. I support that because it is part of the process of nation building, deliberate use of state instruments. In the same way, if you come to offices, you will have to make sure that there is quota, like you say every state will must have a minister. That's quota. Federal character means whatever you do, and you have to see this, the principle behind this zoning. Every part must have that sense of belonging. Not necessarily that if you move to any agency, every segment of the society must be represented. It is not a proportional representation. But I'm trying to say that it is a good thing in principle, but when applied by politicians, they know there's what they call politricks, so we have to wait.
I like the way you put it, Prof. Interestingly, hilarious, but very meaningful. There are two things I would like to address. I'm going to come to the first one I'll talk about later. And I've just been looking at the data available to us that when it comes to the share of the biggest pie in terms of the biggest office, political office in the land, in the 26 years of our democracy, the Nigerian state has been very, very magnanimous to the southwest and the northwest. Both of them are shared, in the region of, by the time Bola Tinubu ends his first term, our president ends his first term, we'll be talking about almost 22 years. If you talk about Olusegun Obasanjo's 8 years, Bola Tinubu's 4 years, that's 12, and you go to Muhammadu Buhari, 8 years, God rest his soul, Yaradua, who also has passed, rest his soul as well, 10 years. So collectively, they've done 22 years. We're going to come to that conversation. I just needed to put that at the back of your mind because it's an important statement you made in closing. But let's talk about the PDP. We're going to have one of their persons joining us later on the program. What the PDP has done so far in terms of signaling what I call messaging and imaging, how do you think the Nigerian people are receiving it? Because this is where I'm going to with this. Nyesom Wike was at the vanguard of ensuring that we, with the G5 governors, worked against the People's Democratic Party in 2023. In this election, it's very clear. He's going to work for the president, but he's still trying to make decisions for the PDP. One of his persons in that G5 has now, been at the leadership or been at the vanguard of the new front of the PDP, which is Seyi Makinde, the governor of Oyo State. And is now championing more like a cause himself and Bala Mohammed. So you're wondering exactly what exactly is going on with the PDP. Is it that they don't see the way Nigerians are seeing them, or they just chose to be blind to the way Nigerians are seeing them, if you get my drift?
Yes, I think there are people who want to see that the PDP is revived. But then you also, as you rightly mentioned, see Nyesom Wike, who is backed by the powers at the federal level. So when you talk about this perception and the decisions of the PDP, there is in political science what we call the locus of power. Locus of power does not necessarily mean the people that take the formal decisions. And they don't necessarily need to be in the room. It is the center of power may be outside the formal authority. So PDP can take that decision by the locus. Maybe, in fact, if you go to any place and you say you have the first thing you do if you are politically sensitive is to identify the centers of power, so that the SA to a particular to the president may be more powerful than ministers. And you see it, for example, under Obasanjo, that Senator Oba was said to be more powerful than the ministers and governors who are going to use him to get access to the president. So this is the way I want to look at what decision is being. Who is the masquerade behind all the decisions? Because we have seen what seems to be deliberate attempt to weaken the opposition parties. And when I say deliberate attempt, all of them could have done the same thing anyway. The presidency is not likely to go and strengthen the opposition. You can't give your opponent the ammunition to shoot you. No, they don't, it doesn't happen. But we have seen that this seems to be an attempt. So the people on the other side are also playing hide and seek. They don't want to be predicted. I suspect that this is part of all the moves and decoys and decoys of the powers that be. Remember, I think it was in this your program or one of the programs here that I said President Tinubu, whatever you may think of him, is both a lion and a fox. So you don't fight him frontally. You use you don't use him. You have to find a strategy that will make him not be able to predict you. And that's what if I were one of the politicians that are trying to bet, because I think this was an attempt either to bet some people to come into their fold, I'll be suspicious. I'll be suspicious.
In other words, if Peter Obi were to be watching right now, would you advise him to accept this bait, as you put it? Because it's been zoned to the south, and it doesn't look like ADC will work for him at this point.
Let me tell you that all these politicians, including Peter Obi, they have their options A, B, C, D. Atiku resigned from the ADC, from PDP, has not joined the ADC. Because they all know Peter Obi has not formally joined. And some people say, oh, tell us where you stand. I say, this might be his own strategy. I can tell you, if Atiku decides now to join the ADC, don't be surprised that he may lose, somebody might be propped up and he will lose the nomination, and that means he has been completely neutralized. I wouldn't want to advise Peter Obi. He has his own advisors, and he's not a political fool. in the end, he has to take his own decisions. And but if I were him, I'll be extremely suspicious. And just like I have to know that this is a fox, somebody who is, you know, you will not demur in terms of using any kind of strategy to neutralize an opponent. And he's also cunning, which means his moves, one plus one, you know, projected on this political space, I will not want to take it to be true. I will look beyond the figures. So it's up to him to know what his own political strategies are telling him and what this move. But I believe that once any announcement is made, they create scenarios. You do scenario mapping. Does this presidency mean this? Are they planning to do this? In the end, like any chess game, you take a position, and sometimes, quite often, it may work. Sometimes it may work. Sometimes it may not work. But we don't know. But in all this, there's also what we call the fog of war, where one variable that you know you did not anticipate in your own analysis, you did not factor in your own analysis, will come to become a game changer. So what I believe will happen is that in the next couple of months, it will become clearer what informed this decision for the PDP to say they are zoning this thing. And let me also make one position clear. I believe the relay race between the Southwest and Northwest is not good for our nation building. In the same way, the activists for zoning and power rotation, when they return to their state, they tell you that zoning does not exist. Again, you see the hypocrisy. If you're from Benue State, you can say they will tell you now politics is a game of number. To add their states to some of these states. And it is not also going to be a conversation only about the major ethnic groups. The man from a small group should also have should know that he is included. He or she is part of this conversation. And that ultimately, you know, from the logwood, as they say, to the White House, that I have a potential of, irrespective of the size of my ethnic group, to move from here to become something very important at the national level. So for now, we have constricted the conversation to, right now it is a relay race. And it's not good. As I say, it's condemnable. If you really want to build a nation, you cannot call anybody and say patriotism. Patriotism simply means there is a particular power configuration which you want me to support. And if I'm already not comfortable with the underlying power configuration on which this political superstructure is built, and you're asking me to come and support you and be patriotic, at that point some would then say, oh, patriotism is the last refuge, you know, of somebody who is, you can say, I don't want to use certain words. But if we really want to build a nation, and I believe unless we get the nation building right, every solution you throw into the myriad of our problems will end up becoming part of the problem.
Quite an interesting perspective. You've already touched on it. And since we're talking strategy, because I try to do calculations a lot. If Bola Tinubu, the president, wins second term, that will be 8 plus 8, that will be 16 for the Southwest in 26 or 20-something years. And then the 10 years of the Northwest. And then between all of that, there's vice president as well, somewhere between 8 for some and maybe less for the others. So it's a valid argument as to the proportional distribution of the power block as far as that level of leadership is concerned, which should give everybody a sense of belonging as captured in Section 14 of the Constitution. But as you say, we'll continue to look at this space. But let's look at strategy that you talked about and what you think the opposition can do. From what has been observed, it looks like there's been a lot of man-marking to deflate momentum on potential individuals that will be able to give Bola Tinubu a run for his money. You're talking about Atiku Abubakar, you're talking about Peter Obi, you see the war online, the issues around personality, digging up of many things of past years. So that momentum to deflate, the strategy to deflate momentum. On the other hand, perhaps the reason why people like Atiku Abubakar has not really been clear where it's going so, because on one hand, there's a Nyesom Wike in the PDP, working for the president. So PDP seem to be, we're not sure where they are going. The Labour Party is even in a worse situation because they have two leadership. You're not sure where they are going. The ADC seem to have coasted on, although the leadership will say it's just a media frenzy but there's this issue of somebody waking up tomorrow and say, oh, I'm the authentic national chairman of the party. So it looks like there's a strategy from the ruling party to deflate momentum as far as the politics of today is concerned. If you were to speak to the opposition, what would you be telling them?
Well, first of all, if you define a problem, it is half solved, and you're very spot on. And let me also say that if the opposition, people you call the opposition groups, now, if they were to be in government, they will probably be doing exactly the same thing the party in power is doing. You know, the PDP did it, and other parties, if you go to the sub-nationals, you go to APGAT, they're also doing the same thing. And that is because of the nature of political competition, where party competition is just seen as a means of production, distribution, and exchange. And where there is this pervasive fear that the group that captures state power will use it to privilege its in-group and disadvantage the others. But ultimately, for those that are just using this game, it doesn't benefit even them or their in-group. Because in the final analysis, power is very transient. And when power changes, and it's bound to change because you're not going to live forever, your group may be suffering from it. Let me just give you an example. In the First Republic, one of the reasons that, you know, there was sentiment against the Igbo, you know, and helped in the mobilization of the other ethnic groups during the Civil War was this perception that they, you know, they kind of dominated the public space. Such thing breeds kind of resentment. And then you saw it with Buhari, when also out of nepotism he flooded the political space with his own people. People started to talk about Fulanization. And now and again people are talking about Yorubanization. So that even the Kayode that is not even benefiting from it is being painted. Even the Shehu that didn't benefit anything from Buhari was being painted. So in the end, the unintended consequence of this, probably positive, is that we cancel, you cancel out all the system of our old system of allegiances, and you start it all over again. So we say the Igbo, we don't trust them, the Fulani, we don't trust them, the Yoruba, we don't trust them. So you reconfigure the system of alliances, in which then, what will probably happen is the currency of trust, which group now are we going to trust? That will be the consequence. Right. So if we are trying to use your own machinery to dominate the political ecosystem, there are unintended consequences, maybe not for you, because power is transient, but later for the group you belong to. So my advice to the opposition, as you rightly say, to put it simply, is to know, one, you don't give up, because in the end, there is always the God factor. There is always that variable nobody has that. Even the master politicians have not anticipated. And let me also say this. Every general eventually meets his Waterloo. So at that point, everybody is calling you politically invincible. It's also the time you're opening your flank for the oppositions to sling in, the David and Goliath. You just have to find that weakness, which they did not anticipate, and then play on it. And I believe they are doing it. These are also politicians. They are playing their own game. Right. Whether they win or not is a different thing.
Well, I think it will do well for some of them to have you in their corner, because you're a good political strategist from this angle. But Professor Adibe, we have to thank you for your time. It's been a very insightful one. Professor Jideofor Adibe, Professor of Political Science and International Relations, Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.